No, 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 no. Wait. See, that was almost the exact reaction that I had when I read this news today. Because after experiencing the Game Awards nominees from yesterday, the only thing that I thought that I would be thinking about was how many world premieres were going to be showcased, how many times would the talented and dedicated people who make our games going to be interrupted and told to wrap it up because they were eating too much of the sponsorship times, and lastly, of course, how much time Kojima was going to be spending on his segment. The last thing that I thought will come to mind was Sony pushing that big red button for acquisition. Okay, before the fear-mongering sets in, what is actually going on? See, very soon, while you boot up your next FromSoftware release, you might be greeted with a PSN notification on your Steam account and have that blazing blue light from the PlayStation logo make you wonder if you are dealing with a PlayStation exclusive. Because while this has yet to fully come into motion, Sony is at least in the talks of acquisition with the majority shareholders of FromSoft, which is Kadokawa Corp. And to sort of spell out why this can be scary is that Sony, as you would know if you played any of the FromSoft titles that have made a buzz recently, have some shares in FromSoftware, but they want to increase shares in specifically the conglomerate that is dealing with FromSoft, which is Kadokawa Corp, wherein they hold 2%. Now, they want to raise that 2% to a full-blown 100. Of course, being a publicly traded company means that shareholders are going to have the final say in the dealings. However, it also means that the stocks are ripe for the taking, and if you're looking at the current surge right now, it's just indicative of the sentiment that people have about this, at least people who want to invest in it. So the question is, of course, why does Sony want to do this? Well, like most things today, the answer is growth. Yep, that's what companies do. Sony wants to attain a size that is just too big to fail. And like its rival Microsoft has shown more than any other in recent years, acquisition is the name of the game here, whether or not things actually pan out to be good. However, while people might be painting this as being like the acquisition of the Elden Ring developer, it's actually way worse. Now, don't get it twisted. There are grounds to call it exactly that, because Elden Ring has made numbers, right? Earlier just this year, in February, the game cemented its status as the best-selling FromSoftware game ever, with 23 million copies sold. Just to shatter that record here in June, as they sold an additional, I think, 2 million copies, reaching 25 million. And of course, Shadow of the Earth Tree, a DLC that sold 5 million copies in 3 days. Insane numbers. But with what regards Sony though, they have that 14-inch of Venom in FromSoftware. And by 14-inch, I mean 14%. Sorry for that visual. With Tencent owning almost the same, and of course Kadokawa owning the rest. Now, if you're not familiar with Kadokawa, I don't blame you. They are a Japanese media conglomerate that has been dealing with a lot of weeb stuff. I'm not joking. From the streaming service Nico Nico to not just FromSoftware game, but the likes of a thing that I streamed the other day, a Lollipop Chainsaw. I know the game is not new. I played the remastered remake version of it. And of course, they're responsible for way too many mangas and light novels. So in other words, if this dealing goes through, given that Tencent then owns those 14% circa, it would mean that Sony will have 86% ownership of the company. And of course, when it comes to games themselves, while they do not own Dark Souls, they do have Bloodborne, they have Demon Souls, which was perhaps one of the best remakes that we've ever seen so far. And of course, I'm almost hearing you say it, but Jack, didn't FromSoft buy the IP of Elden Ring from Bandai Namco? Yes, they did, which will mean that Sony will have that too. And I have to emphasize one thing, the whys of the acquisitions here is not just because PlayStation. They have done jack with Bloodborne, so what the hell is going on with the PlayStation exclusive? No, it's not just that. This is Sony that we're talking about, not just PlayStation. Sony, who made it clear in their previous investor call that they want to release a major single-player game every single year. Read this. In the studio business, we expected sales and profits to decline in the second half of this fiscal year compared to the same period of fiscal year when Marvel's Spider-Man 2 and Helldivers 2 were huge hits. However, we are making steady progress in development of new titles and improving our live service game processes. And starting with Ghost of Yotei, which is a sequel to the smash hit Ghost of Tsushima, we planned to continue releasing major single-player games titles every year from the next fiscal year onward.
Bruh.
Mind you, this is the same company that had the means to release 6 live service games by March of 2026, something that they had to actually cut in half from 12 after the blunder that was a Concord and of course the cancellation of The Last of Us multiplayer. Now, I don't want to exactly beat up a dead horse here, but after Sony's hack and subsequent leaks, it was revealed the ginormous cost of the single-player experiences, with games like Spider-Man 2 being 3 times the cost of the original. Their games are way too expensive. They shouldn't be, but they are, and they also take 2 forevers to release. So, for Sony, it is in the best interest to get hold of a company that has the ability to release new IPs or new games in the least every 2 or 3 years. And that's something that FromSoft definitely can do, and they do that with quality. But that quality is a thing. There is a fear for how they will handle this. For during this year's PSN drama regarding Helldivers, I was quick to remind people of what happened to Bungie. People were hard on Arrowhead, justifiably so of course, but like Bungie, the publisher was given a grace period, one that was snatched at the first sign of discontent. So there is a likelihood for them to have a period of creative and publishing freedom, which of course Sony can reverse on, or they can just jump immediately into the exclusivity business, which we hate, but that has proven to just work for Sony. I know that I'm speaking about it like it's already happening, but let's be real here, the possibility is too damn high. As an example, one of the reasons why Concord was pushed so quickly, despite the fact that the game was more than half-baked, it was fucking raw, was because Sony had a full-blown cinematic approach to its marketing. They were going to release weekly photorealistic cinematics, like the ones that we see in the intro of the game. Use the special episode from Amazon's Secret Level show to promote it even further. Like, they thought that they were cooking. They didn't, but they at least tried. And you cannot blame Sony for trying to do the same thing when they can now get hold of a company that has so much media consolidation in Japan. Like the aforementioned Weeb stuff. We're talking about J-Novel Club LLC, Anime News Network LLC. You know that they are indirectly responsible for one of the greatest anime this year. So Sony really wants those deals to come through. They want those new IPs because they don't feel like they have any. Remember the statement that the COO was saying earlier this year? I might just pull it up right now. Yeah, he said this: whether it's for games, film or anime, we don't have that much IP that we fostered from the beginning. We are lacking the early phases of IP, and that's an issue for us. Remember that quote that made most of us go like, my J word? You have Bloodborne. What in tarnations are you talking about? Well, Kadokawa Corp's Media is what they were talking about. Like, to bring it closer to home. You know how Miyazaki tends to promote the Elden Ring manga? Yeah. Guess who's making that? If you thought Kadokawa, then you've hit your bingo. You don't get your product pushed more than by having it featured into actual multimedia. And Sony wants the same thing that Dragon Ball is having with Sparking Zero and the mangas and animes. They want what League of Legends has with Wild Rift, Legends of Runeterra and Arcane. They want what Nintendo has. They want especially what Nintendo has. Look at this. I'll have you remember that Sony's games are rarely on sale. And when they are, they tend to only lower the cost of the deluxe edition of things. Remember that. They want to have the same strategy as Nintendo, who are always sure in the success of their games that they never discount them. Ever. Like, sure, a retailer might be doing something of the lonesome, but Nintendo themselves, on their shop, No, they never set them at a discount, and that despite the controversies and lawsuits that they are always embroiled in. They know that they have their consumer base tight around their fingers, and it has taken them so far. And the same thing applies with Sony today, because as an example, not much has budged in the wake of the PSN drama. Games like Helldivers and Horizon are still unavailable in some countries. And that didn't stop people from buying Ghost of Tsushima the very same day that the PSN was made mandatory for PlayStation games on PC. So Sony knows how to get their money back for their expensive projects. So how much more would they want to do that if they can acquire something that is even more low cost? Because you don't necessarily need to make a huge TV show or get Amazon to feature your stuff to have it promoted. You can stick the landing with making a light novel, making a manga. Suddenly your stuff becomes popular and it gets picked up by fucking Netflix, and you get that Netflix money back. Delicious in Dungeon is the anime that I was referring to before, if you didn't catch that. For gamers, however, this could spell doom in many aspects. It might mean that the latest FromSoft release will not come in your console. It might just go straight into exclusivity to make sure that the people who owns a PlayStation Pro gets to play it first, and only a year later does it get released on PC. And that's like the best case scenario, as I've mentioned in the same lights of Bungie. What happens if Sony starts interfering with the creative process of games? And even further to the extended media, because in all fairness, I don't see this as being the magnificent thing that they are envisioning in terms of alternative media, because you know the structure, or you might not, but at least Sony does have a pretty stringent approach to how they produce media. So this could also interfere with the creative process of whether we're talking about anime, books, or whichever it might be. So this cannot be good. And at the end of the day, if we're looking at a competitor, which it's all about, right? It's just a huge big dick measuring contest for these huge companies to just piss over each other. Sony wants to make sure that Microsoft does not have an inch to move on. They want to make Phil Spencer scared at every single thing that they release. But very much like Microsoft showed last year and this year, and more people are waking up to, being a publicly traded company and being acquired by a big studio spells doom. I personally am fearing a lot for what is happening to the gaming industry to a certain degree, especially when I am just always very cautious whenever I hear something like this happening, with the same light of whenever a CEO that is renowned for doing some bad things gets a new position somewhere, in the likes of, let's say, Andrew Wilson being supposedly a pick for Disney to a new position over there. Mr. AI man is going to do what there? I don't see any of that ever panning out to be good. However, that being said, this was my sort of breakdown of the news that I read today, and I kind of wanted to share it with you because we're likely going to see, given that I'm sometime covering some Elden Ring stuff and FromSoftware, we're likely going to see a lot of coverage on that in the coming days. That being said though, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and yeah, see you next time with some more light and fun content. Bye.